Hey guys, what's going on? It's Codiak here, back for another Let's Drink video, and today we've got a very exciting episode because we are talking about 7.2, new dungeons, new raids, new systems in the game, and we've got a really big crew today. We've got 7 people total on the Let's Drink video. We've got some new players, 3 new faces to the Let's Drink EP video stuff, so let's just go around the horn, introduce everybody, and tell everybody what we're drinking.
On your mic.
Yeah, flip down.
Hi, I'm Ishavi. I play Shadow Priest, so I like to think of myself as Bard in Publik, and I've got a Slurpee here today. It's Pepsi.
There you go.
I like it.
Hi everybody, I'm Publik. Today I'll be drinking an IPA straight from Minnesota. I also play a Shadow Priest for those of you that did not know.
Pretty sure everybody knows.
We get it.
Yeah,
Everybody knows, Sean. You're a big deal.
I didn't know.
There you go.
Hi, I'm Lalla. I play a Holy Paladin here, and I'm drinking Tennessee Honey Jack with some ginger ale.
Oh, that's a good combo.
And it's delicious.
Don't tell him he did anything right.
Shut up.
Kelso, you would be up now.
Am I? Okay. All right,
Okay.
all right. So I'm the only one that's doing bombs tonight, but I'm doing car bombs. My name is Kelso. I play Enhancement Shaman last time I checked, and it's a pleasure to be with everybody tonight.
What's up, guys? I'm Sang. I'm the Havoc Demon Hunter, one of the officers of Exiled Power. I'm just sticking with water tonight because Kelso's drinking enough for 2 people, so I figured it was probably better if I abstained, but looking forward to talking about 7-2.
Yeah.
My name is Marty. I am one of the newer members of EP. I play an assassination rogue, and tonight I am drinking a 6-pack of Strongbow.
All 6 of them in this video. Enjoy.
Well, we're already on this many.
Well, there we go.
So...
We do, guys, we do drink responsibly here in EP because we hang around and talk to each other online as opposed to go do stupid things in the world. So we're going to do stupid things online instead. And the first thing, guys, I want to talk about is obviously 7.2. We just did the 7.2 kind of like preview video, Kelso and I, but let's actually talk about it now. Let's really dive into it. And the first thing I really want to talk about, it's been on my mind a lot, is this idea that Blizzard is going to release content a lot quicker, right? And obviously one of the big things that comes up with that is, okay, new raids, new dungeons, and obviously we know that Tomb of Sargeras is not coming out on Tuesday, but there are still a lot of changes coming in 7.2. So I guess I just want to get kind of your gut reaction, and we'll start with one of you 3 new guys first, either Colin, Lalla, or Marty. Like, what's your gut reaction to 7.2 coming out? How do you feel about how fast it's come out? Like, what are you guys thinking about it?
I actually am happy with the pace of content. The only thing I would have had a problem with is if the raid was coming out this tier. I mean, this week, but it's not. It's at least 12 weeks, I think, behind the patch. But I think as of right now, when I log in on my Paladin from day to day, I run out of things to do, and with this patch, I'm gonna have things to do again. I'm at 54 points, so I have nothing else I really want to do.
Well done, Kelso.
let's
Sorry, I tried to do it as discreet as possible.
Discreet.
Let's
Here,
keep it-
close.
let's remember that Blizzard's a business, and their first priority is to whatever's going to make them the most money. And
Casuals.
The people that are more casual, right? So the people that are concerned about content coming out too fast are us as Mythic Raiders, but we're in the top 5% of the player base. The other 95% are the people that care about this world's content coming. Like this patch 7.2 minus the raid is a bunch of outdoor zones, fun content that's more casual. Like for us, the impact of Tuesday is a tiny amount of balancing changes, and then we're just going to go back into Night Hold on Tuesday. And it's not really going to hit us that hard until they start balancing until the raid comes out. The faster pace is really, really nice for their casual player base, which is most of it. So while we feel kind of weird about it, I bet the vast majority of players are thrilled.
Colin, you got any thoughts on it?
I'm completely indifferent. I don't care at all.
It's Colin for you, everybody.
I don't know.
It is what
Belong
it is,
to the
right?
right.
When it comes out, it comes out. I don't, like Marty said, there's not really that much of an impact. It'll be interesting to see if it's actually fun stuff to do. If it is, I'll play it. If it's not, I'll just continue playing.
Continue to
one
be
of my
sad. Yeah.
Many alts. So
I think
Continue to log on to raid.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the scary thing about 7.2 and the speed of things is that 7.2 just means that 7.2.5 is closer. So I think for me, especially with the work I do with Shadow, like that's actually what I'm more concerned about is all the stuff that will change with almost every class in 7.2.5 with the balancing changes. So I don't know.
I mean, doing all those big balance changes. I mean, you did the massive one when the Nighthold was released, when all of those class changes came out. Do you expect to see another massive readjustment of the way that classes work, especially with the implementation of a new tier set, possibly mixed tier sets? I mean, it's going to be a nightmare for you. New trinkets, the whole shebang. A third legendary probably opening up in 7.1.5, perhaps. I mean, it sounds like weeks of work for you.
I don't know. I mean, I think I'm just really concerned that because I think overall, like if you look at Warcraft log statistics, overall, of course, the Nighthold balance is in a better spot than it has been in a long time. It's not, it's not like Emerald Nightmare where like Shadow is like twice as good at any other DPS class, right? I mean, it's definitely a lot more toned in. I will say, if you look at high-end progression rating, that's definitely not the case. Like you see like Warriors and Death Knights really up there, and range is even more sparse. But I think overall it's in a decent spot. But you're right. I mean, everything they're adding is just adding more fuel to the fire. So like it could explode after that. And I think there's a lot of classes that really depend on some of these changes, and they could tweak one knob and then like your class is totally different. So I don't know. It's scary.
It's interesting. You probably do the most stuff out of all of us with the class balances, and obviously you're the biggest in the numbers community and the theory crafting community. And this is just my gut reaction to it, knowing that I'm not a numbers guy. But it seems as if, like you said, the DPS really kind of have targeted in, zoned in a little bit, and the spread has been a lot tighter. And I've actually felt like the healers have kind of spread out, and the healers are starting to become unbalanced with each other. And I was wondering if you could tell us if that's accurate, if you think that's what's going on, and what needs to change, broad strokes and finite strokes, to get everything back on track, or if you think everything is already on track.
Well, I think I'll let Lalla kind of talk about the healing balance. I think it was like almost dead on exact in Emerald Nightmare, maybe even TOV. I think it is definitely shifting for sure, so that is kind of worrisome. But I think the DPS balance, the main problem that I think Nighthold had was that the Rays were tuned around having 54 traits and having, tier and everything. So I think if they don't make that mistake again, it should be okay. Because, they were saying, oh yeah, you have to have, we balanced everything to have these traits. And that's kind of worrisome for a guild like us where we can't necessarily dedicate that much time. So I think for the most part, they hit the nail on the head for DPS. But I don't know. I can't really speak to healing balance anymore. I don't pay attention to that as much as I used to. But Lalla might have more to say about that. I know he keeps up almost. I think you have every healer maxed now, right? Or most of them.
I'm working on a monk next, but I know that as far as Emerald Nightmare goes, we were actually like I feel like it was the closest the healers were all like on par, better than any time I ever remember in the game. Like even when we coming into the expansion, we thought Disc Priest was going to be something you just don't bring. But it was like the sleeper healer that progression guilds actually used a lot. So it was all the healers were actually pretty on par. There were some that were better in the beginning, but I mean they weren't better enough to the point where like you were hindered by bringing them. But as of right now, it's like Mistweavers are at the weaker side of the spectrum. And like if you look at all of the progression kills of the top guilds in the world, they ran like in 3 healers, they always ran a paladin, shaman, and a druid, because they all were the strongest healers of the tier. It doesn't mean you can't kill things with the Mistweaver, because we do, but the healing balance is a little off, and it doesn't seem to be getting better because they're not making any big changes for it. I know Xerxes says some things are going for the legendaries, but I don't see the balance changes coming through for any of the healers, really.
So what about, though, in terms of healing? And we had this argument the other day in the officer channel, when there's the opportunity to get a good player, and even if it's in a less ideal class, say you're going to have 2 Mistweavers. Obviously, that's not ideal, but where is that level of player skill outweigh the class diversity or the class spread? If you have a top 5 healer on your server, and you have a populated server and everything, the numbers are still good in comparison to the top players in the game. Do you look over a player that is performing well, but if they're in a class that's not as performing as well? What do you think about that from a healing perspective, Lalla?
Well, it depends. Like from the situation we are in, we can run like different healing comps because we're a 2-a-day guild, so we're not like at the front head of progression, but we are doing progression content. But I mean, we can run sub-ideal comps because of that. But I mean, at the same extent, there are certain healing cooldowns that you rely on. Like a shaman is brought mainly because their spirit link is like vital to like some of the first kills on Croesus you couldn't have done without a resto shaman. So at some point you're going to be choosing the class over the player because they bring certain things to the fight that a Mistweaver doesn't. They have revival. It's like really their one big CD and it's a 3-minute cooldown. But shamans have multiple cooldowns that they are brought to because they have utility other classes don't bring.
Yeah, it's interesting. You talk about suboptimal comps, though. I mean, Sang and Sean, you guys know, and Kelso, you too, when we were doing our HFC progression, all everybody ever talked about was, oh, you have to have a Disc Priest. You're not going to get past this without a Disc Priest. And it doesn't... and it's the same argument to the 54 traits thing, right? Oh, you're never going to kill Croesus without 54 traits. Everybody has... these arguments that get thrown out there in a world-first context, and then we seem to just make it work.
Ignore it to a certain degree.
Well, yeah, I mean, you throw a certain comp at a particular fight for a certain period of time, and maybe at first you don't succeed, but eventually, once you learn to manipulate that comp and deal with, your strengths and your weaknesses, that's when you really decide on how to deal with that fight. And for us, I mean, look at Croesus, and maybe we didn't have the most ideal comp in the world, but at the end of the day, like, we were still able to down the boss and to figure it all out. And I mean, it's not only a testament to our raiders as a whole, but just the ability to work with the advantages and the benefits that we had with our raid team, and to work against the disadvantages that we had as a group.
I think something to keep in mind is like the people who are killing it the first day, they're running these comps because it's the easiest. It doesn't mean it's unkillable with the comps we're running. It's just it's going to be harder for us to do it that way, but it doesn't mean it's impossible.
I think to move us forward, it's just like I think the problem is just magnified just because we can only have 3 healers on some of these fights. And I think that was an issue that we didn't necessarily see in Emerald Nightmare as much. Like we could run more healers and that was fine. I think that's a problem that Blizzard should address, and they continue to say, I think like every expansion launch, like, yeah, our goal is to have 5 out of the 20 players in Mythic to be healers, and like that's never happened. Like HFC, we were still doing 3 healers, like on progression, especially towards the end. Emerald Nightmare was kind of the same way. I think we started lowering it as we got towards the end, but that was only on like the last 2 bosses really. But I mean, I think this is the same problem where like the fights are tuned so tightly that we have to drop healers, and I think that's causing this balance issue to kind of explode a little bit.
Well, and I don't think it's necessarily even because of the DPS requirements. I think it's because, and we talked about this a little bit in the last video, I think it's just the nature of the way they design Mythic fights, where it gets to a point where mechanics aren't damage you can heal through, it's one-shot mechanics. So at that point, it becomes inevitable that you have to have players, one, that can dodge mechanics, and if you're doing well, there just isn't as much damage to be healed. So instead of you need 5 healers, no, you only need 3, because if you get hit, you're gonna die anyway. And that's, I mean, Honesty Hour, that's one of our problems that we have kind of consistently in
Marty,
Exiled Power
is,
we died at the beam, or in the few instances where there is damage that doesn't kill you but is avoidable damage, we often take too many hits. And so I think if that dynamic is going to change, where you actually are going to need 5 healers for Mythic, you have to change the way fights are designed to where it's more than just a flat damage increase. You have to find a way to make mechanics that are more complicated, that aren't just one-shot things. It has to be like actually require technical gameplay ability.
The problem Blizzard's running into now, though, is this game's been out for 12 years. How do you make mechanics that are complicated enough to be punishing that don't just kill you? People are just so used to mechanics, so good at this point, that like the only thing they can do to make it hard enough to keep up is to one-shot you at this point.
Yeah, but I think it goes back to the same thing you're saying. You know, like, who are you designing the content for? The 5% or the 95? So, like, you have someone like Colin who's recently joined, you know, the Mythic rating scene, and, like, he hasn't seen a lot of this stuff before. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, that's kind of your situation, right? I mean,
Yep.
So, I mean, it's like there's a side of the coin, right? Like, not all was rated, you know, back then. It's like they do still reuse some things, and I think they could go back to some of that stuff too. And it's like, I think what saying is like the healers have to meet a check, and like that's it. And it's
But then
like,
they get shit on for something like Xavius, which is just a rehash of Cho'Gall for going back to things they've already used.
you're gonna piss off someone no matter what you do, though. So
That's true.
But you have to look at
Yeah.
it. I mean, let's dive into raid design and Nighthold. Obviously, we've got our sights set on Tomb of Sargeras, but in my opinion, I have not gone into Nighthold yet, and we haven't been in there that long. I haven't gone into it being like, oh, great, another Nighthold run. I'm going to be pissed off because X, Y, or Z is a really obnoxious fight. It's a really poorly designed fight. In my opinion,
no Iskar.
there's no Iskar, there's no Hellfire Assault, there's no boat, you know, battle in the sky. There's nothing in there. There's nothing in there that is technically poorly designed, in my opinion. And they do cater it really well to the Mythic crowd. Look, we deserve to die if we get hit by a beam. That's just my opinion. You're combining simple mechanics on a fight like Kha'Zix, 4 simple mechanics that are one shot, I guess you could say, but you also have this extremely tight DPS and healing requirement. That's a true Mythic fight, in my opinion. Like, at some point you have to say, okay, team, you have to suck it up. You have to avoid these one-shot mechanics. It's not that hard. And yeah, you still have to perform to the best of your capabilities. Now, I feel like we're getting a little bit of a breather with Tichondrius because we're doing a little bit of the cheesiness with the brands. But in terms of where they've gone with raid design, I mean, look back to where raiding started. They've been going in the right direction, even if they're releasing new content. And the last 4 or 5 raids, I haven't been upset with the actual raid itself as a whole, just minor things here and there. So where do they need to go in Tomb of Sargeras to keep moving in the right direction?
Well, the raids are RNG now, though. You know, like, this entire, like, past 2 expansions, the raids and the classes have just been adding more RNG to the game. And, like, back when I raided, you know, in other expansions, mechanics always happened the same way, the same time, or you controlled them. You know, like on Dragon Soul, like you picked up orbs, or like you chose to hit this tentacle, or you did this thing every single time, and it was always the same. But now it's like, oh yeah, Croesus, Colin gets the fucking orb every time. It's like,
in our case, there's no RNG because it's always Colin.
well, there's that. So I mean, like, so that's a fundamental difference in how encounters are designed, right? Like, why are they always RNG? Because that's the problem the guilds, I think, are having on Croesus, is that, you know, we show up one night and we one-shot Croesus miraculously, and, you know, the night before it, we, like, spent, like, 2 hours on it because it was just, like, RNG or whatever have you, you know. It's like, and we saw the same thing in EN, we saw the same thing in HFC. It was like, we had to RNG a good parse, or a good, like, setup in the raid. It's like,
I think
I
a
don't
huge example of that is the pillars on Tyke.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know why, like, there's
Yeah.
4 pillars, and for some reason they decided to make them spawn in a random orientation with the boss, which to me just doesn't make any sense. And sometimes it screws over the melee because this
Yep.
pillar spawns under him, or
All you have to do is-
sometimes it's in the back of the room, and I have to run all the way to the back with a brand. It's
Just
doesn't
look
make
at the
any sense.
times when the rogues died, because the pillar spawned underneath of me, interrupting my flash heal, and that's 1.8 million healing when it crits that Marty didn't get, and then he dies. Because I'm pumping so much healing because they just spawn underneath me, and you can't control it. Like, you don't know where they're going to come until they knock you back.
Yeah, but in all reality, though, you have to acknowledge the fact that Tyke, honestly, is a pretty big variation from kind of the go-to in Nighthold, because aside from, you know, not getting an orb and dying when you come out of that phase, which I think is a great mechanic, I think it's a great spin on that phase, there's not a lot of one-shot mechanics to the fight if you're doing it correctly. And if you remove the fact that we're cheesing the brands, those aren't one-shot when they explode, but it's being intentional about when you cause that damage to be dealt to the raid. So it's a lot more than, hey, the difference between Heroic and Mythic is everything one-shots you. Like, they changed the way you had to deal with the mechanics. And I think if they really want to improve their raids to be better than what they have been without becoming repetitive, you have to come up with more complicated, more inclusive mechanics. Because let's be honest, what does melee do in Nighthold ever?
We
Nothing.
tunnel the boss.
Like we
tunnel
run
the
from
boss.
here to here, and we DPS the boss. And range does everything. Okay, so you're pretty much ignoring half your raid with most of the mechanics. Look, what's exciting about that? I mean, it's cool. Like, oh yeah, I can stay on the boss and do more damage, but I don't enjoy raiding simply because I can do a lot of damage. If I can do a lot of damage while I'm handling mechanics, then I feel like I've accomplished something. So I really think you can find a balance between, hey, the difficulty is now the hardest and everything one-shots you, to even something like Tyke where, okay, when can we allow ourselves to take this damage in a way that doesn't screw over the healers? That requires everybody to think about what you're doing, not just the healers, not DPS, but there has to be coordination on something like that. And personally, those for me are always the most rewarding fights, where there's a lot of team coordination, trying to handle things properly.
I just think, though, for most of us here, and you could tell me how many years you've been playing this game. Like, I've grown up with this game at this point. I've been playing this game for the 2 months after this game came out. I started playing, and I started raiding in vanilla, and in terms of its fundamental, what it is at its core, it hasn't changed that much in terms of raiding mechanics, right? You avoid this, you kill this target. Sometimes you interact here as a healer and a DPS, or a healer and a dot, or something like that. So the core, foundation of raiding hasn't changed. But if you look at a game like Star Wars: The Old Republic, or you look at a game like WildStar that has vastly different endgame content, like, there is a polish to Blizzard's endgame content that other games can't replicate. The reason I stopped playing Star Wars: The Old Republic was because the endgame content was so basic and so benign that I had done this 10 years ago in vanilla. So in terms of design, we keep screaming for more variety, more interaction, whatever, but then you get it, and it's almost like you kind of go the other way. You get a fight that has a ton of interaction like Iskar, and we fucking hate it because it's so out of the norm, and it's so bulky, I guess you can say. Like, there's no perfect fight. If there was a perfect fight in your head, what is it, and why is it that the perfect fight?
I'm going on record as saying you guys shit on Iskar, but I like Iskar.
You can go die in a fire.
I thought it was unique. I thought it
When
was
Cody
unique.
said that we all
didn't
hate
make it to it on Mythic, though.
He hates it.
You didn't do it with
it
us.
on Mythic.
That's the problem.
I didn't do it on Mythic either. That's true.
Yeah, that was-
It's kind of like exactly how we did it, the beam.
Right.
To me, for somebody that calls out mechanics on a daily basis and is so more focused on mechanics, it boggles my mind that people can't handle simple mechanics. But that's part of the charm of the game. That's part of the having a team and figuring it out. But I go back to my question. Best boss they've designed in this game, and why? And is it the perfect fight? Is that a thing? Is that an achievable goal?
That's a hard question. I think, again, I go back to my thing with the RNG of a fight. And I think, to me, that's the problem, is that, I can say I really enjoy Gul'dan as a fight. And I think it's a good raid fight. But at the same time, if I get the, what's it called? The brand thing that shoots you backwards and people have to soak or whatever. Bonds, yeah. Now the fight's fucking shit, and I hate it. You know what I mean? Like,
So it's a perspective thing.
When it's happening to Colin, it's great. But when it happens to you, it's a piece of shit.
But that's my point. Is like, because I don't know when it's happening, and I don't know how to, like, I know how I'm going to handle it, but like I can't plan as much as I could.
So you're flying back.
I can look at the DVM timer and I know when it's coming, but at the same time, I never know if it's going to be cast on me. And to me, as a raider, that's kind of a problem for me. Is like, if I know everything that's going to happen, when it's going to happen, I can plan everything ahead. That's like fundamental to how like the game works in general for a lot of things. Like, when do I put my DPS cooldowns? That kind of thing. And I think raid encounters are so, like, every pull is so different now. It's like, that's why guilds are taking several hundred pulls to kill a boss. Even when we were doing HFC, like Gorefiend and Manaroth, that took us a lot of attempts. It's just that, oh yeah, we got bad people getting sent down on Gorefiend, or the imp spawn in a bad spot on Manaroth. It's like the same example over and over. It's like, yeah, like that fight, that pull was just terrible, but the fight was good. I don't know.
Yeah, I wouldn't go so far as to say this is my favorite. It's relatively recent, and that's why I guess it's fresh on my mind, and I haven't had a lot of time to think about it. But I think Mythic Archimon was a great fight. I think it was designed really, really well. I think there were a lot of interesting mechanics.
And Mythic especially, I think. Right?
Yeah, that's what I'm speaking exclusively about Mythic Archimon.
Yeah.
And acknowledging that when we were doing it, we did have maxed out rings, so we could cheese the start of the fight. I mean, essentially skipping phase 1. But there was a lot of really interesting things going on with that fight. There were a lot of things happening. Everybody had to deal with mechanics. I thought the added phase was fantastic. I mean, it was kind of a nice little throwback to 40-man Nax with the dance.
That was fun.
You know, something like that. It was cool. It was interesting. You could plan out the fight, but there was still some variation. There were a few mechanics you didn't know who was going to get them. And I loved it. I loved that fight. We did pretty decent progression pulls on it. I don't remember how many we had for our kill, but at no point did I ever feel as if the encounter was like, what's the phrase? It's like when you're going to a casino, you feel like everything's tilted towards the house, you know? I felt like that fight was fully in our hands, whether we were going to succeed or not.
Yeah,
and in that sense, I really liked it.
Yeah, I think the thing, though, you're talking about, Sean, going back to what you were talking about, you're talking about scripted fights, right? And when I think of the scripted fights, strip all the RNG away from them, who gets what, debuff or whatnot. Croesus and Manaroth were two of the most scripted fights. Sang and I could call that fight in our sleep at that point. And maybe it gives you that preparedness, but after that night of wiping on Croesus on Tuesday, it is so mentally and physically exhausting, whereas wiping on Tichondrius all on Thursday didn't seem that bad.
So here's my example that I could use here. It's kind of like trinkets. There are different types of trinkets in the game, right? There are ones like Whispers in the Dark, that's like super RNG. There's stuff like Convergence of Fates, where it's like it does this thing all the time, no matter what. And then there's stuff that is an on-use effect, like Grimoire or something like that. And that's my difference with these encounters, right? Like, Croesus is one of those things. It's like Convergence of Fates. Everything's this way every single time. That's boring.
Except
I'm not. Yeah,
Right.
They've given you an instance of each of those types of fight in Nighthold.
Yeah.
Like, you're never going to please everybody,
No,
so why
I
not
agree.
give 3 of each kind of fight, which they kind of have.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's fair.
I think
that's their best shot at
Ultraxion.
balancing.
Yeah, I think the example I like to go to is Ultraxion from Dragon Soul, where like buffs spawned and you got to pick like who could get what buff, and like to me, I enjoyed that. But
Always the Holy Paladin. Give them all.
well, I played a whole I
yeah,
don't know.
that was my glory days.
It was fun times. So that kind of stuff where like there is something happening in the fight and you get to choose how to handle it. So that is not present in Croesus, but it's also not an RNG mechanic. Does that make sense? It's a little.
Yeah.
So there's, and I think Marty is right. That is kind of present in a way. So like Trilliax, for example, like you choose who's getting the cakes, but at the same time, that choice is to handle mechanics. Hi, Colin. Yes.
You don't
Cake
choose.
boss.
Colin gets the cakes.
But like, so I don't know, because like the difference with that and Ultraxion is that Ultraxion's thing was, you chose that based on who was going to get the benefit out of it for like killing the
Yeah.
boss, not for like
Worked
mechanics. So I don't know. I mean, I think that's my problem with it. Not problem, but like that interaction was interesting, and you can kind of do the same thing with some fights in Nighthold, but I think that was my point.
I think the fight has to have a good balance. Like, if I go back to like Heroic Rag, back when Heroic was what our Mythic was, the hammer was always spawning, and you could tell where it was going to go in the waves, and then those big fire pools would spawn. You didn't have to break them, but you could choose when to break them and who was going to break them. Also, but there was also an RNG effect. When the hammer would come down, the ads would spawn on either side, and you didn't know what number was going to spawn until it lit up. So you'd be able to decide on the fact. But it wasn't like detrimental. It wasn't like, oh, we got like the RNG just messed us up and we're done. But you could
like
always
the chains
handle
on
the
Archimon,
situation.
when we had to break chains on Archimon, that was a healing thing. We got to figure out when to pop them, and it was really fun. Like as a healer, like once we like were done with progression, it was just like break all the chains at once. Let's do it. You know what I mean? Like
it seems like they need to give us the keys as raiders to succeed or fail within our own realm, right?
But isn't that that's all Legion is? Legion is like the expansion of taking the keys away, isn't that?
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I think the key to a great fight, the fights that you guys are talking about, having the ability to tell your team and organize with your team when to do X, Y, and Z. Although RNG has to play a role in it, but RNG shouldn't dictate your success or your failure. It should just dictate how your team has to react to a set of boss abilities or encounter mechanics. Like the chains. There was no set way to break those. You had to determine as a team when to break them. On Krostus, you have no option, right? You have to soak the pools. If the pools are in a bad spot and you don't get the team in the right place, you lose. If you have too many people die to a beam, there's no gray area. You die or you don't die. So like black and white, it's not doesn't seem to be that great, and that seems to be where we have the problems. Where the RNG impacts how we play, that's not a bad thing. But if the RNG is dictating when we succeed and fail, that's where it seems to be an issue. And let's just stay on RNG for a second, shifting over to more of the loot side of things. And it's
Don't you dare do it.
Don't even.
we have to.
Here we go.
We have to.
Oh my god.
Because all of these changes coming in 7.2, you know, we have the Mythic dungeons, Mythic plus dungeons being totally reworked, right? Now, Mythic dungeons are going to be harder, and you're only going to have to complete a 10 to get level 905 gear. That, you know, there's the Nether Shard things, which are the new currency, which can Titan Forge up to a fucking legendary, which somebody did call us on that in a video, Sean, so I do want to make sure that you're 100% accurate on that. Are you 100% accurate on that?
Unless
Yeah, they said
change
that.
it. Unless they change it without me knowing, but there's a vendor that literally sells blue items that can Titan Forge your legendary. That was my understanding of it.
There's two vendors. There's two
Well,
vendors.
yeah,
One of
that's
them
true.
sells blue items. One
The
of them
other
sells
one's epic.
purple items.
Yeah.
The blue items cannot Titan Forge to legendary. The purple ones, which are the same thing but slightly more expensive, can. So you're not
Okay.
wrong, but it's like
Okay.
it's
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
the difference.
All right, so you have RNG in loot in that way. You also have the constant conversation point that why do we even bother doing Mythic when we can just stay in normal and heroic and get gear that can Titan Forge past where we are in Mythic content? And this whole idea of RNG has been beat to death, but it needs to be said.
It defines Legion.
It defines Legion. Legion is the expansion of RNG, and there is, oh my god, there's so many ways we can go with this. You know, we're not losing raiders and guilds to lack of content. We're not. We're losing raiders to the frustration that comes with a grindy, random expansion.
But
We're
that's
losing
not.
Raiders to not having an
fault.
anger of the half giants.
You had to
But
go.
I think
I will say that though, a comment that we didn't necessarily make. You said that was kind of an RNG thing with the purple items. I mean, technically you could argue that it's not, because Blizzard has said, unless this has changed in the last few weeks, they did say, you know, let's say you buy the purple item that like turns into a ring. If you have a ring legendary, that's what it's going to turn into if it procs a legendary. Like if you buy a ring, it's not going to turn into your chest legendary.
Yeah,
Oh
the
yeah,
problem
it's a way
is-
to target
Specifically
legendaries,
target-
but not. Really?
A ring.
The
Well,
chance,
yeah, I
from
mean,
what I
obviously,
understand-
I'm going to get a Cephas and not an Anger of the Half Giant, but you can at least target the ring item specifically.
But that's
And
just
the chance
fixing the
with the guild.
problem. You know
The
what I
chance
mean?
is stupidly low. Is all I'm trying to say. Like Blizzard
Oh
come
yeah,
out,
I mean, it's the
they've
same
said,
as a legendary.
but it's like disgustingly low for those specific
Yeah.
ones.
But that's
Sorry,
just a
go ahead.
band-aid fix, right? Like that's not them fixing the
yeah,
problem.
yeah. It is
That's,
supposed to be
you know,
It's
a
that
touch up.
it's them
Um,
walking back the line. You know, they have
Yeah.
they admit when they're wrong for the most part. They've admitted that the power gap with AP was completely off. They admitted that their AP system had some great fundamental philosophies behind it, but in terms of the execution, they failed pretty miserably. The grindiness, the RNG ness of Legion is terrible. But that goes back to saying, I think we had a conversation about this recently. Like, we put this burden on ourselves.
absolutely.
There is no
Yeah.
defining principle within the game that says you have to do this, this, and this to be a successful team. We do that to ourselves. We superimpose that on ourselves. I mean, isn't that
Until
Yeah.
they balance the raid around 54 traits, and then we don't do it to ourselves because you can't do the content unless you do that.
But we did ask for it, you know, back in WAD, right? Like all anyone said about WAD was there wasn't enough to do, and I think
Well, and
there are different ways to answer that question, right? Like, and I think their answer was, well, let's just make RNG a thing and make the grind infinite. And then it's like, well, screw you guys. It's
And I mean-
never done.
we also have to you can go as early as the start of this expansion. People were pretty upset that Mythic Xavius only took like 10 pulls, you know.
But that
and-
could have been because of the systems of RNG, right?
Potentially, but I would say that people probably farmed more artifact power than Blizzard expected them to have at that
Yeah.
point in the game,
That's
because
their fault.
everybody jumped in and was like, I gotta max my artifact, I've got to go ham, And I think some people were going nuts, farming Maw, farming this with artifact power, and then Xavius drops because we're all way more powerful than we were supposed to be.
In the last Q&A, they said they were surprised at how many people were at 54 traits when Nighthold came out, because they did not expect us to be there.
Right.
I mean,
that's their fault.
They
come on.
No,
They made it too strong. That's the thing.
No.
How do you not see that coming?
I think they gave us so much freedom, and hear me, whenever they talked about something like maxing out your artifact and things like that, as early as when they announced Legion, what did they say the whole time? This is going to be a long process. You're not going to max
entire
out
expansion.
you're not going to max out your artifact in week 2. And that was kind of like the small text in the advertisement, like, hey, don't try and max out your artifact in a month.
Don't do it. Just believe us.
But that's
you got to be willing to step away from the game. But people naturally, like they do in WoW, said, I've got to do as much as I possibly can. We talked about this in the last video. You can either err on the side of giving people not enough to do, and then Steve stepped away for a minute, but you have him making a video of, this is what I do in WoD, and he logs on each character, and he does the garrison, and that's it. And even now they have the phone app for that, so you don't have to log in. You can just do it from your phone.
I'm a big fan of that, by the way.
You can go on the side of, I'm going to give you so much content that you're not going to run out. So if you want to play a fair amount and you want to do all these different things, guess what? You have the opportunity to do it. And if there's no way you can hit that square in the middle. Obviously, that's ideal. But I think
it's all trickled down, right? Because the top end raiders are the ones making all this noise. I don't know who was saying this before, but
Colin, you were saying this.
Yeah.
Speak wisdom, bro. Let them know.
Yeah.
About what? Like
The trickle down thing.
No, I know.
We were
So
talking
okay.
just yesterday about this,
Yeah.
about people
Yeah.
complaining about the game being so grindy.
So people complain about it being grindy, and they also complain about, I'm expected to get this legendary, but and I might make people angry by saying things like this.
Make them angry.
Do it.
Get him, Colin.
Get them fired up.
I've had the same frustrations myself with a lot of things, but viewing it from the other side, it's kind of like you buy a lottery ticket every day and getting frustrated because you haven't won the lottery yet, right? It's like, people complain, I don't have the right legendaries, but the fact is we still haven't hit the wall.
I think.
Yeah, you say that, right? But that hasn't stopped us from progressing. The fact that you don't.
That's a good point.
I'll also say we didn't have everybody at 54 traits when we killed Mythic Croesus. So it's this trickle down where what happens, and I was going to say this also when you guys were talking about comps earlier with healers and stuff. When people are doing their world first race, when a new raid comes out, they come up with all these strategies because the fact is they have no gear. They're very under-geared for the content. And so to make up for that, they max out their weapons. And then they're still low-geared, so to make up for that, they only go with the exact tools they need with healing comps. Well, we're not in that position anymore. And so the fact is that we could probably go in with any healer, and as long as they know what they're doing and we do everything right, we can do it. We don't need 54 traits. People say it's balanced around 54 traits, but I would argue that that's if you're like 890 when you go into the raid.
Blizzard has come out and said the last 3 bosses are the only ones balanced around 54 traits.
I think when people say that it's balanced around 54 traits, they're just repeating what they've heard when people were doing the world first race and they had no gear yet. Because
I think that was a dumb statement by Blizzard anyway, because I think what Colin's saying is there's more than just that factor, right?
Right.
There's 54 traits, there's your skill, there's your gear, there's your strategy, which is huge, and your composition. And the traits was just one factor of that. So
it's interesting. I think. Oh, sorry, Colin. Go ahead. Finish it up.
It's just that people hear what the people who are involved in these world first nonsense do. They hear them say things like, you need 54 traits, like you need to bring this healer, and suddenly everybody who's doing LFR says we don't have a rested shaman.
How am I taking down LFR cooldown without 54 traits? It cannot be done.
And it doesn't matter.
Right. You're absolutely right.
They're not using the right perspective. It's like, you're thinking about it as if you're playing in the top 1% situation, but we're not. I mean, even we get bought, we haven't hit a wall despite people not having.
Okay, Colin, just because you're not in the top 1% doesn't mean we aren't in the 1%.
But I think this is also a fundamental part of the game, though, because, you know, as much as I help out in the Priest Discord, you know, a lot of the questions are, how do I min-max myself?
Mm-hmm.
Even if they're 870 eye level, you know, it doesn't matter, you know, because to some people, that's what they like doing about the game. And I think to a degree, you know, like the 95% are a lot more limited than we are, purely because of the time factor. You know, because before you could min-max yourself to the same degree for the most part. I think the Legendary Ring is an exception to that from WoD, you know, where like you were behind. But that was the only thing you were behind on, right? You could still min-max everything else to a degree. And now it's like that process is huge. Like I said before, there's all those factors to min-max or that can change your output. And I think people have been trained to think that, you know, if I just fix my gear, everything will be better.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, if sorry, go ahead, Cody. I'll go after you.
Yeah, so I mean, it's interesting because Colin or Sean, one of you guys just said it. Like the top 5% say something, and it's the gospel, and it's kind of that dangerous thing that kind of goes on in the world right now, right? The reputable sources or quote unquote reputable sources say something, and then everybody else, it's trickled down. It's trickled down information. It's trickled down knowledge, and that's a really dangerous thing if you have the wrong people at the top of that pile, and especially. Even if it's not the wrong people, but people in different situations, right? We're not in even a similar situation to the guilds that were trying to kill this stuff week 1. So
We're a lot more geared. than
right. So the logic
I
has
wouldn't
to
say
be
a lot more
adopted.
geared.
I mean, it's different. It's different.
I've gone up 7 item levels since we started Nighthold because of the gear I was at already.
Yeah,
Because
but
of the
right,
Warforging
but
system. So
7 times
it's the
20.
same-
I mean, that's
Yeah, at the same time, yeah, I think Colin's right in that. I mean, if you want to be honest and be completely blunt, people that are doing the world first race are, in my opinion, really trying to kill the boss before your character should be able to kill it. You know, and that's why you have to kind of develop these cheeses and things like that. But obviously,
It's not a realistic view of the game
right,
for
right.
most of us.
Yeah, for 99% of people playing the game, it's not realistic or relatable. And I think he's also right in saying that for anybody else to complain, oh, you know, the artifact power grind is starting again in 7.2 when it comes out, is just inaccurate because, I mean, look at 7.2. It's not releasing a new raid. It is releasing some new content to help people that are coming in late to the expansion. But, I mean, also look at this, and it's kind of frustrated me for a second until I realize, I mean, honestly, this is not to hurt me. This is to help other people who haven't played the game as much as I have. What is it? If you have 35 traits, you're getting the benefit as if you had 50.
51 or
weapon.
something.
Yeah,
The
50, I mean,
35th
how
trait
crazy is that? You know, like it's such
it's
a huge.
it's another catch-up
thing.
mechanic that they want.
Yeah, it's a catch-up thing because look, what they're saying is, hey, guess what? You got about 3 months until the next raid
catch-up.
is. Oh, sorry, catch-up mechanic. Sorry, Colin. Words are important things. It's like, hey, you have 3 months until the next raid is coming out. Mythic Nighthold, there are some bosses that are scaled around, I'm not going to say max, but fairly high artifact traits. If you're at 35, we're going to give you like you have 51, and we're going to empower you. So you have 3 more months to progress in Mythic Nighthold. And most people are kind of stuck at this, 3 or 4 boss limit, at least for our Mythic progression on our server. I wouldn't be surprised if you see people that are at that level. I mean, we expect to go in and have an easier time with some of the bosses that we've been struggling with. And I think people that have had a hard time breaking the threshold into Mythic come Tuesday are going to have an easier time because they're going to be very, very, very much stronger. I mean, they're going to notice a huge boost. Can you imagine logging out at 35 and logging in at 51? I mean, you're not going to know what happened. Well, yeah, 54 or whatever it is that it balances up to. Those are the people that might not be in Mythic yet, and they're going to go in and they're going to crush Scorpion, and they're going to, hopefully be able to take down Chronomatic and Trilliax. All those guys are going to drop. And then as they continue to have artifact power or artifact knowledge that's higher, they're going to proceed to fill out their artifact into some of these new traits, the updated traits, and the rest of Mythic could very easily... think about it. Think about it from the perspective of somebody who is going to start Mythic Nighthold on Tuesday in 7.2.
Don't tell me what to do.
I will tell you what to do all I want. with artifact knowledge progressing and new traits and new ways to maybe even target specific legendaries to upgrade your gear from Mythic Plus being toned down, right? You don't have to push a 25 to get decent gear. It's not impossible or unlikely that if you started Mythic Nighthold Tuesday that you can't clear it before the next raid comes out.
That's
no, I
assuming
mean-
what was holding you back was just-
only your gear, not your skill.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Because these people
obviously,
still aren't going to be
Yeah.
great at the game. These
There are
points
people-
aren't going to make them gods at the game all of a sudden.
But I'm just saying, if you have a guild that's capable of raiding, that can do mechanics, because what have we been saying? The mechanics are not that complicated in Nighthold. They're not.
If you haven't stepped
This
foot in
is-
Mythic, there's probably a reason other
This
than your
is-
gear.
This is
Maybe.
something that Lalla
might-
and I have a lot of experience in. You guys, listen, seriously, you guys has been in EP for a minute, have been raiding Mythic for a long time. Kyle and I have been in heroic only guilds,
true.
and the reason we're in heroic only the reason the heroic only guilds exist is not
Lala
because they're
was
not.
bad.
It's
Wait, no.
because
Yeah, I know.
Lala is bad.
Game.
No, seriously, I've been in this position for years, where they're in a heroic guild. What happens is you have people that are good enough to raid Mythic. You have like half your raid, and then you have your other half of the raid that's shit, but you want to raid with your friends or you like the community or something, or more often than not, you just don't have enough people.
Yeah.
Like the people
Why we're
that are-
here.
the people that are at 3 of 10 Mythic, those are the people that are hindered by ability. The people that can't break into Mythic are hindered by the 20-man requirement to have 20 good people. Kelso fucked off, I guess.
Sidebar. Did Kelso die?
Also, no, I think he
man.
must have like timed lights to save money, you know?
Oh my god.
Passed
Should
out.
we call the authorities? Is he all right? He didn't scream. We didn't hear
I
him
saw his
scream.
Be alright.
girlfriend come into the screen, give him water, and then he left.
Oh boy.
So he might be
All right,
thrown
well,
out.
if you were looking for the enhancement point of view for this video, you're probably not
How's it
going to get
going?
it anymore. But don't worry about it. There's still
I used
6
to
of us
play
here.
enhancement.
Oh, there you go.
This could be its own video.
Like, all right.
The amount of people stuck in heroic that can't get into Mythic is
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah, it
Because
is.
you have to have 20 good people to do it. And like I would say that like Mythic guilds are like top couple of percent, but heroic guilds make up dozens and like
Vast
it's
majority.
so much.
Well,
Well,
let me
because
just
everybody and their mom wants to make a guild when an expansion comes out. And if somebody was talking about this even on Arthas, like we have, how many guilds do we have that are in Mythic on Arthas?
I would say 2 pages on WoW Progress, 40 maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. And somebody was talking
Such a
about.
strange
I mean, if you let's be honest. Even in Mythic guilds, you don't always have 20 players that are what I would call top of the line Mythic players. And somebody kind of asked the question that I think deserves consideration: what would happen if all the best Mythic players from those guilds like conspired together, and actually put their best? I mean, we're pretty much kind of divided amongst guilds for various reasons. You have friends, schedule works out, but I mean, honestly, I think 7.2 is showing that Blizzard is trying to give you enough to do if you're a hardcore player that it's not going to come easy, but they're also going to help you catch up if
It's
you're
trying to
not
bridge the gap.
hardcore. And
But that's
but
the thing,
honestly,
right?
I just think, I mean, let's be honest. We seem to be at the mark as a 2-day guild that it's hitting everybody above us way harder than it is us, and everybody below us, they don't even have a clue what's going on.
I don't buy
I don't
that.
say that. I don't say that dismissively. I always say play the game how you want to play the game. If you only want to clear heroic, that's fine. Like have fun doing it. But I don't feel the stress that everybody above us who's breaking apart seems to be feeling. I don't know.
But it's the same thing every expansion, right? And I think the artifact power grind and the Mythic Plus grind has always been in the game, right? Like, especially with the guilds above us to an extent. Before Legion, the replace of that was split runs. Split runs aren't a thing anymore. Guilds are, like, I think maybe 3, like the top 3 guilds may have done them. No one else touched it. Like a very few of them did. And
Are you
in
talking about
place
the
of-
launch?
Just in general, like split runs.
Ooh,
kind
I
of-
don't know about that.
Because
No,
I
I mean-
know that Method ran 5 split runs of
Yeah,
heroic
yeah,
when it
that's-
came out.
That's what I'm saying. So like that, like those guilds did, but like split runs used to be a thing that a lot of guilds did. Like even like we did them back in HFC. Like that was a part of thing we did to help like with our alts and stuff. Like that was a thing we did. But like with artifact power and Mythic Plus, like they brought that split run thing to those communities that don't have enough players to continue to progress their character, because that's what you used to do, right? That was your only way of getting better, was to essentially raid with minimal amount of people to gear only them and ignore
Blizzard
the rest.
has said they don't like that. They wanted to go away from that.
Like,
Yeah,
let's hold on.
If that's what they're getting, then it's working out for them.
Mhm.
So, like, let's segue this to guilds in a second, but I just want to throw something out there, and I heard this on Convert to Raid when I started listening to that podcast a couple months ago. They had talked about World First being its own thing, right? So, World First in my head, and I'm going to throw out a really crazy idea. You know,
Here we go.
you sign up as a team, right? You sign up as a group of 20 or 25 members, and you're all exactly even. You get a set standard set of gear. You get a set number of, if artifact points
Like
are still
PvP,
the thing. Like PvP.
right?
You are exactly the same as the next team next to you. There is no difference in the way that your kit is laid out other than your skill level. And that's how the world first race, in my mind, should be. Because going back to split runs, there will always be a team that wants to work a little bit harder than the team below them to push themselves further, which pushes the entire pack forward. But if Blizzard was to say, okay, guys, we're going to coin this thing, it's called the world first race. Every time a new raid came out, you could sign up a team of 25 players. You have 20 and then 5 subs. You can sign up for the classes that you want. You will get a standard set of gear. You will have all of the same abilities, boosts to your artifact points, things like that. Everything is exactly the same in terms of the outfit of your character. But once you get in there, that's where the differentiating factors are. We've given you enough to kill the boss. You have to figure out how to kill the boss. And that will take away the pressure on teams, because there is no pressure to do added work other than what are you going to put into that raid? How much effort, how much creativity, how much organization and coordination can you have within that raid environment? But Blizz has vastly ignored anything other than trying to make the game work for the 1% and work for the 99%. And that's a really complicated thing, right? You talk about this macro balancing. Macro balancing is ridiculously hard. I mean, Sean, you can attest to just the sim crafting stuff that you've started doing in Legion. I see you on there every day running numbers, trying to figure out just how to get everybody the information that they need to be successful. But if that information, again, is coming from the top, it trickles down and it's the wrong information, or it's information that's taken out of context, then you're setting everybody else up for failure. But if you set up this whole other entity, just like you would set up, the esports arena for PvP, you set up the esports world for the world first race, make it a thing, find a standard set of rules, then you're taking that 1% and giving them the recognition, one, that they deserve for all the effort they've put in, but their creativity, allowing guilds to do that in a way that doesn't impact the rest of the community, which is much larger.
But doesn't that just shift it, though?
I'd like to take this.
Yeah, go for it.
That will become the only thing people want to do.
Yeah, no, exactly.
No way.
Yes, 100%.
Do you guys want to do that?
100%.
Nope.
Yeah, I want to do the hardest content. That's why I do Mythic. People that want to do Mythic rating because it is the largest challenge that Blizzard has set forward. That's why people did challenge modes. That's why people do plus 20 keys. That's why people do Mythic rating. They play this game.
You're missing my point, though. The point is to open up a window of time, like the 2 week. You know how it took them 2 or 3 weeks to clear Mythic Nighthold, right? I'm not saying make Mythic a different set of Mythic. I'm saying within that 2 or 3 week period, you're saying, okay, do your teams want to sign up for this Mythic world first race? Your gear is never going to change. You're going to kill these bosses with a set standard of gear. I wouldn't want to do that. I know that we're not a world first guild.
I don't know.
I think you then invite people that they do Mythic rating and they see this basically new version of Mythic rating, and that is what people want to do.
But that's
he does have a point, because if you did that, you're taking away the one wall that separates people that do world first from guys like us who do Mythic content, which is time and preparation. Because think about it, people that do world first, how many hours do they have to raid a week?
I'm sorry,
and
but
how much prep they have to do, split runs, they have to do all this stuff. I'm just saying, if you know, teams. Right? I'm just saying, but if you go in and you say you have a set gear level, all these things, I do think Marty is right in that there are going to be a lot more people. At least they might not get it, but they're going to at least try and engage because what they see is, hey, I can step into this. I've got the same gear level as the people who've
bad
been
thing?
doing
No,
it.
Let me ask you
No, I
a
don't
question,
think so.
Cody. Let me ask you a question.
Might not be.
Why don't you stop at heroic? Why don't you stop at heroic, Cody?
No, I still think you're stuck on this
No,
idea.
answer the question.
Why
Why
do I-
don't you stop at Why don't you stop at heroic?
Because when I joined Exiled Power back when Dylan and Soulcore were around, we talked, and I knew the goals of the team and where the team wanted to go. I knew that they wanted to go into Mythic content, and I wanted to be on a team that was pushing harder content. Simple as
Right.
that.
You make this new Mythic, and I know you're saying it's just for 2 weeks, but you can tell people that. But at the end of the day, it represents harder content. Then you essentially make current Mythic a lesser tier of content. You make it a 5th tier of content, and people will always view it that way.
Well, I think it's
totally
also,
disagree.
but people can never get there, and I think that's the problem. Even if you time gate it, you're also saying that, we killed Mythic Archimond. Obviously, it was a lot later than other guilds, but we still killed the same boss, right? But our achievement is not the same because we did it
Right.
on a different
But I
playing
think
field.
that's important.
Right.
But that's important. I think the guilds that are pushing world first content should be recognized for their skill, not for how many hours they put into the game. I don't think they should have to put in an absurd amount of hours, remove themselves from their real lives to be recognized for being the best.
Yeah. My point is, though, if you do it for them, I think it should be across the board. I don't think because it's too selective.
There's no saying, and granted, this is all hypothetical, right? This is all an imaginary world that we live in right now.
Yeah.
But there's nothing that says Exiled Power couldn't sign up for it. I'm asking you guys truthfully: do you think we're a world first guild?
No.
So
No,
No.
but I think we're a guild that
I think we have
to
some
do
people
the
who are-
hardest content.
you're right.
Yeah.
And so as Sang said, yeah, sure, you may have twice the amount of guilds sign up that can actually do any content. As soon as we started running into a realistic wall, right? As raiders and as raid leaders, we know exactly when we hit a wall that we can't surmount because of gear or artifact points or whatever. We know when those walls are. So if you put heroic guilds in that Mythic content, just because they have 20 people, they're not gonna get past the first boss, the second boss. It's not
But
designed
you would find
for
people
them.
who could. You
That's-
would find people who you wouldn't know otherwise. Like, if you look at Sean, for instance, he's probably one of the best Shadow Priests that I've known, but he plays with us because of his time. But if you would put us in that situation, people are gonna notice how good he is. And if we had those 2 weeks for every tier, 2 weeks is a lot more able to manage than just progressing through the entire tier. And so you'll pull people from other guilds that are. I mean, I wouldn't say we're subpar, but for that, we would be subpar. But you'd be able to pull people.
We're
fine,
subpar
man.
now.
Sean doesn't have enough haste.
But I
Sean
mean,
doesn't have enough haste. We're fine. We're good.
you would find people who are really good at the game that don't have time, but in that scenario, they'd be perfect for.
That's important. That's important to find those players.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. To me, that sounds a lot like, I mean, you would get a lot of people involved who previously weren't, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, I wasn't saying it was a bad thing.
You get a lot of
Mythic shouldn't be
faces.
an exclusive club, but the world
Yeah.
first race should be the teams as on equal playing fields as possible. It should be as equal as possible. My team shouldn't be able to edge out another team on content just because they sink more time into it, and that's just my personal philosophy
Yeah.
on it.
Our first goal needs to be Blizzard needs to actually pay attention to the PvE race because as of right now,
Yeah.
That's
we
what I'm
don't.
saying.
There's no attention drawn
That's exactly
to it.
what I'm saying.
So,
No.
the first
so I
goal
guess-
would be Blizzard to recognize that PvE is a thing besides PvP. I mean, they know it's there, but they don't draw any attention to it. There's no competition that's not brought by a third-party site.
Well,
You
that's
can
what
dress this
so
up. Go ahead, Colin.
It's a self-imposed race.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when you say then it needs to be on equal terms.
That's to believe everyone's going to do
that's
it.
only with the assumption already set that Blizzard is interested in that.
Well, that's
right?
why I'm
the-
living in the hypothetical world.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is the race itself came about simply because there are people who want to work that hard and do that, and so
I'm sorry,
guess-
I don't think you're gonna find the guys from Method, the guys from Exorcist say that they loved grinding Maw 7s until they were 54 traits. There's there's nothing enjoyable about that. This game should be enjoyable, and it should be competitive at the most competitive level, but it should also be fair. And time, although it should play a factor into how guilds kill bosses, it shouldn't be a factor into, is your guild prepared to be the best? And that's just my personal philosophy on it. I don't, no one's going to admit that running 600 Maw 7s was fun. They're not going to.
You can dress this up however you want, but you do nothing but add another layer of difficulty, and all that does is frustrate the people that do Mythic raiding.
It's not another layer of difficulty.
Let me kind of try and see if I can help Marty's point a little bit. So, like, I think you're talking about, let's go to PvP, because I think you're actually kind of advocating to go more into that realm a little bit.
Yeah.
So if you look at a battleground and a rated battleground, they're treated the same, right? Like, balance is the same regardless. So my point is, when I go into a battleground, I am on the same playing field, even if I was to do rated, like, it would be the same. But what you're saying is, based on when you sign up to do the content, the situation and the whole thing is different. So it is kind of another thing. Like, if my gear gets scaled the first 2 weeks, but then doesn't every other week after that, those are two different things of content. And then you're essentially just moving the 1% down 2 weeks.
It's almost
why
like
do you raid to get for prestige? You raid because I killed this boss at this time. That shows how good I am, right?
Yep.
That's why people that come in and say, check out my head of the curve, and you're like, well, you're a boosted animal because I have cutting edge, right? So if you come in here with your cutting edge, and then this guy above you goes, oh, well, I have 2-week time trial cutting the super edge, then your cutting edge becomes the new ahead of the curve.
Look, there is a definite EPing thing involved with this, but what I'm saying, it goes back to Kyle's point, is that Blizzard has not recognized the world first raise as anything other than a pat on the back. It is all superimposed on ourselves, like Colin said. The thing that I'm not saying add another difficulty, I'm saying it's a race. Everybody should start from the same point, and everybody should end from the same point. Look, if you look at a street race, right? Look at a marathon that's run in your state. Everybody starts with the same exact thing, and the only thing that differentiates...
Yeah, but they were able to train for it.
Yes, the only thing
but the only
thing that differentiates them is skill, and that's what should differentiate a world first guild. They should be the best players that work the best together.
I don't know.
You think that gear should define a player? Come on, that's bullshit.
No, I don't think gear should define a player. I think the Warforged system's kind of shit. But if you're comparing to a marathon, you put me and Nick in a marathon together, and say I've trained for like fucking 10 weeks and I'm okay at marathons, but Nick's great at marathons, but he hasn't trained at all. I'm still gonna kick his ass because I put the time in.
But that doesn't. But
I'm not saying that this should be the deciding factor, but like, you shouldn't ignore the fact that people can put time in.
Look, but put Sean and me next to each other, right? Say Sean was playing a hunter. He would be better than me 99.9% of the time, and that's because he's a better.
Self-imposed.
But he's a better player, and I know that. And I know that from the numbers. So you should have guilds that are the best players pushing to be the best. And gearing and preparation and RNG should not play a factor. And it is elevated this expansion because RNG is such a factor. If your guild was super lucky, you got the best legendaries on the most amount of your tunes, you got the best Titan Forged rolls in dungeons, you got lucky. That shouldn't be a factor.
In the World First Race, though, if you read the post about the World First Race, they said, yeah, legendaries, they sucked. They didn't get the ones they wanted. But a lot of the World First guilds, they said that it wasn't a deciding factor of why they didn't kill the bosses.
I'm sorry, what's the deciding...
A lot of them had like 7 or 10 legendaries already on their mains when Nighthold came out because they knew what they were doing.
What's the deciding factor as why, I'm giving a random percentage here, 1/3 of the best guilds in the world have quit raiding and quit playing? Why?
Because it happens every expansion. It doesn't just happen now.
Time burnout.
It's burnout, and this has been the biggest grind in the game since I can remember.
I mean, it's the biggest grind, but it happens every expansion. People quit. Guilds quit. Guilds fall apart. It happens every time.
Look,
no matter what, you're going to lose people.
People can say that PvP sucks and that the competitive PvP scene is super niche, but look, those teams are built of the best combination of players. They work the best together, and those teams win. And they're on equal footing, and they're starting at the exact same spot. Why not treat PvE that exact same way? I don't want to be... I don't want RNG to define if I'm going to be better than the next hunter, because that's what's happening right now.
I agree. I don't want the roll-up system. I don't like the roll-up system, but I do think that split runs, you can't punish people for running split runs, and the fact that RNG is included in the game now is just a factor. And if I had to choose, I wouldn't put RNG in the game, but I would still say, yeah, you have 5 ults because you have the time to put into it. I don't care. Like, that's part of what you want to, how you want to prepare. It's like if I was preparing for a marathon and I decide to run every day of the week, but Nick only wants to run one day of the week. Yeah, sorry, he didn't prepare as well. But I mean, I don't want the RNG factor to be the reason that it doesn't work.
I think PvE is open-ended, and I think that is the fundamental thing. And I think people try to close-end PvE. So what I mean is, there are different ways of attacking PvE content, and there's a lot of different people and types of people that want to put different time into the game. Like Colin was in a guild before us that struggled really hard on it, on a lot of stuff, like normal Ursoc or whatever. I don't remember what it was. I can't remember. I mean, like, that's a thing, right? They don't give,
normal Ursoc?
Colin, take us through your normal Ursoc kill.
but they don't give two shits about this conversation, right? So if
they don't
Blizzard
give a shit.
changed anything to what you just said, Cody, they would alienate that player base in a lot of ways. So I think that's
how though. How? Because all they're doing is creating a system that acknowledges the world first race as a thing, right? We're invested in the world first race. We talk
But
about.
you put it more in a box. You start boxing off something that has never been boxed
But-
before.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
that's-
I guess my biggest thing, and I hate being the one who's like critiquing something without recommending something better. Like, let's say they do that. They make it where when you step into the raid, you're on the exact same playing field as
Like
anybody
PvP.
else.
Like PvP.
Here's my question. What do you do after that?
You go back to Mythic raiding.
What's the point of having gear
You step
progression if you're
down.
done?
But hold
if
on,
you're
what's
done?
what's the
If
point
you
of
did
what's
it
the
and
point
you're
of them
done-
playing now? There is no point. They've already beaten the content.
Yeah, so I think that's the different
There's
ways
no-
you play the game. So why do you play the game, right? Like Cody plays the game because he likes to enjoy raid mechanics and he likes to kill raid bosses. I play the game partially because I enjoy the math part of it and I enjoy like figuring out mathematically what's the best thing for me to do, like strategically, how can I position my character's gear? And you say that that's not a factor, but for me it actually is. Like I spend a lot of time making my gear and figuring out what works best, and to me that's what I enjoy most about this game. So if you take that away from me, I'm not going to raid anymore.
But I'm not saying take it away from you. All I'm saying is you have the same raid, right? You have Mythic here and you have Mythic here, the exact same raid. All that
They're not the same.
No. They are the same. It's a nerf or a buff to the raid community without it being a buff. You add gear as the buff. The more gear you get, obviously, the easier bosses get. These world first guys do not care about anything other than being the best, right? They don't.
Yeah.
They don't care about anything other than being the first guild to kill every single boss. And
So just the last boss.
That's
Just the last
such a
boss.
niche. It is such a niche that they need to recognize it and put it in a niche, just like they do the top PvP guys. There is no difference. They're the best PvPers.
Why do you say they need to do that?
Yeah, I agree.
Well, because again, we go back to the conversation of disseminating information, right? These guys dictated how we played our characters, what we did, how we got the information, and yeah, they're the best players, so we're going to listen to them. But look at some of the best players now. Some of the best players don't even raid in these guilds. They just do the math, like Sean. Sean's one of the best players I know, but he just does the math because he likes doing it. You have Word Up. You have Sal, who does a lot of the stuff for the Prot Warriors now is in our guild. I mean, it's not about being the best guild in the world for everybody, and I would say a vast majority of the people don't care about being the best guild in the world because they're probably not. They have to realize they're not going to be.
I don't know. I think once again, I'm gonna fall back on my crutch, which is my biggest critique of Legion, and that's I don't think that most gamers know how to like manage themselves. I don't think they have enough self-control because I mean, so you can say yeah, the information is disseminating from the people who do it first, and I think anybody who's done Mythic can say to some degree the information we got was wrong. I mean, what I heard was if everybody's not at 54, don't even think about doing Croesus because the check is there. And then we do it, and it's like, okay, we
This is
didn't have
doable.
everybody at 54. This DPS check was exaggerated. Same thing with some of the healing requirements and things like that. But even though that false information was disseminated, I feel like I was able to kind of keep the mindset that Colin was talking about of yeah, that's great information if you're pushing world first, but that's not really relevant for me. So I'm not going to play for 18 hours a day to try and max out my artifact. But I think you had some people who are trying to play like they're world first players, even though they're not, and they're putting this huge time restriction, this time sink into the game, even though they might really only be a 3 or 4 day mythic guild who's not pushing it at a world first pace. And then now what's happening to all those guilds and all those players?
Yeah, I
We're
mean,
burned out.
the time thing is ridiculous.
To make that distinction of, hey, this isn't really relevant for me. This information is coming from people who are doing this. Honestly, like I said before, their character is really capable of it. From a mechanics standpoint, as a player, they're capable of killing these bosses, obviously. But it's like trying to kill a boss 50 item levels before the boss is designed to be killed. And I have to have the ability to make the distinction that everything I'm hearing from these other players probably isn't relevant to me because I'm not doing it at the same time that they're doing it.
Grain of
So
salt.
whenever I hear that, oh yeah, we can get more artifact power in 7.2, I'm not thinking, oh man, back to the grind. Why? Because I've been playing casually and I've been at 54 for a couple of months now. Just a little bit every day playing, doing a couple of things. I never felt like I was grinding artifact power and I capped my weapon. And so whenever I hear, hey, you can power your artifact up more, I'm like, okay, great. That's fine. I can actually get rewarded again for some of the things that I'm going to keep doing regardless. But once again, I understand what my goal is in the game, and I'm not going to let anybody else define that. And I'm not going to let the fact that Blizzard has provided a lot of things available as this sort of self-imposed restriction of I have to do everything. I'm perfectly okay with saying I'm going to step away and I might not even do my World Quest caches for 2 days because guess what? It's annoying and I don't feel like it. And I'm not going to get an Anger of the Half Shine anyway.
Rebel.
I mean, it's a good transition into talking about the current state of guilds and the current state of how guilds approach content, how guilds are dealing with I don't want to call it a content drought, because last expansion we were dealing with content droughts. How do we keep the guild together after 8 months of being an HFC? This guild environment right now is completely different. So I'm curious to see from the guys who are coming from other guilds, what do you feel is the biggest differentiator from your previous guild to Exiled Power, a guild that's still growing in numbers, still moving forward in a strong way?
First of all, Cody, you're going to have to rename this video, not 7.2, but shit wrong with 7.1.5. Guys, all we've done is bitch for an hour.
Well, we're talking about the past to look at the future, I guess you could say.
So the biggest differentiator is with our past guilds, I think you have a lack of organization. You have guilds, like, people don't want to treat WoW as a job. People don't want to treat WoW as work. It's a video game, it's just a video game. It should be treated like one. It's just a fun little hobby on the side. And it is, I'm not, it's not more important than work or anything like that. But if you treat your guild with a sort of professionalism, you're going to have people stay on board and you're going to have people want to come back and you're going to have people want to do that because professionalism begets success. The problem that I've had in the past is I want to raid with 3 of my friends and, it's hard to bring 3 or 4 of your friends onto a guild that's doing really well. So you do a guild that's doing heroic and you hope you do well. And what do you find in those guilds? It's the carousel. People come in, grab gear, and they go up to better guilds all the time, but they have no reason to stick around because that guild can't offer them anything. They're just a revolving door. The problem that Kyle and I have had in the past is that we have tried to make these guilds better, but they don't get better because they don't have a fundamental understanding of what it takes to be a good guild. And what it takes to be a good guild is to run it well, is to run it like an organization. As ludicrous as that sounds to people, that's
you
what
should have seen it when we came over here. Like the spreadsheets you have that show our roster and the things
jerseys.
like the healing cooldowns we have that are laid out and stuff. Like we walked in and I know like a spreadsheet of who's coming in for what boss might be like some very basic for some other guilds like ours, but like coming from where we came from, we were like, wow,
were
there's some
fucking
sort of
losing.
organization. And
It's so funny because like you look at a guild like Fair Enough, and shout out to Cammy and his boys, like that guy is so over organized, it's insane. But it really comes down to your team and how you run your team, because like, and I've said this in so many videos, you have to surround yourself with the best people. And when you don't surround yourself with the best people, that's where things start to fall off. Like if you set a goal, and that's what Exiled Power, even when I was a member of the guild, where we were still trying to figure out our identity and trying to determine what our foundation was, you know, we have this 2-day thing, right? We are the 2-day progressive guild on Arthas.
Premier
2-day, and that defines us. That defines who we are and what we do. We work as hard as we possibly can within that period of 6 hours, and whatever we get done, we get done. Whatever we don't get done, we don't sweat it. We move on to the next week and we push ourselves again. And the spreadsheets and all that stuff, you know, it so much kudos to Sean and Sang and Zerchi and Asmodai for pushing me and pushing each other, pushing you guys, because that's what it takes to keep a guild moving forward. Always having, you know, I use the analogy, you're in a baseball field, right? You're standing at first base, or you're standing at shortstop or whatever, and you have to think to yourself, if the ball's hit to me, what do I do? And that's kind of how I approach the guild with these guys, right? If X and Y happen, what do we do? If this doesn't go right, what do we adjust? And we do that so well now because we've gone through a ton of growing pains. And a lot of guilds don't like to go through the process of the growing pains. They kind of would rather just call it quits, or they have an irrational response to something. So there is something to be said about really surrounding yourself with the right people that believe in the foundation of your guild, whether it be, you know, 3-day progressive rating, 4-day progressive rating, or what we do, 2-day progressive rating with an awesome YouTube channel that basically sucks you guys in with free jerseys, not free, but jerseys and cool swag and opportunities to do things like this. It's more about the community than the actual push to be a Mythic progression guild, because we know we're not going to be the rest, right? And that's purely a time thing. We're rating 6 hours a week. If we think we're going to be the best, we're delusional, I guess you could say. So I don't know.
Personally, I'd really love to hear what Colin has to say about the power of positivity in keeping the guild together, and what he thinks about that. Colin, what do you have to say?
Your mic.
Colin, your mic's
bro.
up. Your
Your mic,
mic's
man.
up, Colin.
I've got a tiny catapult here. It's also a pencil sharpener. And
I like
I've been fixing it. What you ask me? Also got
The
a
power
slinky.
the power of positivity in keeping a guild together through the hard times.
Well, okay. I guess I think I would hesitate to assign one reason that one guild sticks together versus another, because the fact is, because it's a game, people are all playing it for different reasons. And so when, you know, somebody comes, joins a guild, they raid once, and then they disappear, you can't be surprised because it's the internet and everybody's anonymous.
Nerfs, we would like to know if you're safe, if you're out there somewhere.
If you have information, please contact this number.
Please get back to us.
We're
looking
concerned,
for a Red
is all.
Paladin.
We're not angry, we're just concerned.
Colin, as the HR officer, would like to have a conversation with you about your concerns.
There may be a reward involved
Yeah.
But for
for
me,
his
I
safe
guess,
return.
for me personally, the reason I don't have a lot of previous experience to look back on and say, well, that's why I stuck around with that one or left that one. But the reason I stuck around here, a lot lot of it for me was the people. I enjoyed talking to the people.
Because you got Sean here, personal access.
It's just, yeah.
I'm
One
pretty
on
sure
one
that's the worst reason.
You keeping it 100 with Sean. People have to whisper him all day for that.
I try not to bother him because I'm scared of him mostly. But so that's just my reason. It's like I enjoy hanging out with the people, but then somebody else can come along and say, well, I mean, so talking about a world first guild, people don't stick with a world first guild because they like the people. They stick with the world first because they want to do world first, right? They probably a lot of times they might not get along at all. And so talking about what keeps a guild together, I think it varies a lot. But for me personally, what I see with us is it's just it's managed to get a really good group of people together. It's just been fortunate in that regard.
Colin, you're the
You're
glue
welcome,
that keeps
Colin.
us
I'm glad
together.
I came over.
Let me take you
Excuse
through
me?
a quick day in the life of a Heroic Guild. So it starts off when you raid at 9 at 8 o'clock, wondering if you're going to do Mythic that night, even though you've already cleared Heroic. And then at 9 o'clock rolls around and 10 people are online. 9:15 rolls around and you make it up to that big 12. And by 9:30, you've made it all the way up to like 16.
You're
And
almost
then
there.
you go and you clear Heroic again. And then you don't raid your second raid night because you've already cleared Heroic. It's
And then you come back to Discord and say, Cody, I'm interested again.
and then you say,
Please invite me to the guild.
Let's do another. No, but seriously, the problem is, so what happens? So then their officers go, oh, we need to get new people, and they go spam trade chat. First mistake is going to spam trade chat because you only get boosted animals in trade chat usually.
We've got,
Usually.
we've
I don't
got
know.
a couple good
This-
players.
The selection is very limited.
It's limited. You're right.
So you get a couple of trials in that night. You get up to 18. Several of them are bad. And then you just do Heroic again. And then a couple of people are frustrated and they quit. And then you get new people. And then it's just an endless cycle. And you can never push on because...
But I don't think it's endless because I think, in all cases, because I think, again, what happens is suddenly you get the right combination of people and suddenly it starts working.
Or the
If you're
really
lucky.
wrong combination.
Look,
But you
it's
don't
luck-
get it but you don't get that combination by randomly pulling in people and hoping it works. You get that combination because you make a reason for them to stay because your guild is run well.
Yeah, you're
Okay, that's
absolutely
you
right.
have-
There are
Yes, you have-
repercussions for you not showing up.
Well,
One
but
problem we
look,
always had was people would fuck off and not come to raid for like weeks in a row, but they were better. So as soon as they showed back up, they just got right back in that raid. They weren't kicked. They weren't sad. They just got back in the raid because they were better.
It's a
And
huge
then you're
problem.
never incentivized to do what you're supposed to do.
Look, but you're setting up a situation that's nearly impossible, even from our standpoint now. We get frustrated when people tell us 10 minutes before a raid that they can't make it. You know, we've set up the expectation that you put it on a roster, you tell us that you're not going to be there, and that's no problem because we can adjust. But when you tell us 10 minutes before a raid, you put pressure on us as leaders, you put pressure on other players to adjust their lives and their schedules. That's the whole point of rigidity and a structure within a guild. But you're setting up something that's nearly impossible for most guilds to manage. And I say nearly impossible in the sense that it's a huge hurdle to move a guild from Heroic to Mythic. And Sean and Sang during the merge can attest to how many growing pains we had to overcome, whether it be leadership issues, whether it be merge issues. It's not an easy process, but you have to barrel through and you have to push through and find solutions that work. And you have to keep coming back to the table and saying, look, we can be better. We can push ourselves to be better. This is our identity. This is the core of what we do. Let's get the people, let's get the ideas and the leaders that are going to push that idea, that agenda. You're right, Marty. And it sucks to say that it is kind of like an organization, but you need to have the structure of an organization to make it successful. And that's just us. Look, we're not the best guild in the world, but we do have a core of players that is absolutely fantastic. I would love to hang out with you guys on a daily basis in real life, and I do in the digital world. All right. Wow.
There's a reason people.
Okay. This is
There's
awkward.
a reason that people don't leave EP, and it's not because of the fat jerseys, although that is a big deal.
I can't wait to show you
fat-
guys those.
The fat jerseys are like 60% of it, but
Yeah.
no.
I went to
like,
buy one even when I wasn't in here.
Yeah.
yeah,
All right. I mean,
People-
so
people-
go ahead, Marty. Finish it up, and then I'm gonna give Sang the final word of the video.
Oh man.
People don't leave EP because you give them a reason to stay because you are enticing, and that is something a lot of heroic guilds don't offer players.
Oh,
yeah.
no, please
What?
put that
Oh,
away.
Not like that. Not that kind of enticing.
No.
No, that's what I want.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
I
Sang,
think
wrap up the
this
video.
is the
We're coming
point.
up. We're coming up to the one. I get almost an hour and a half. It was a good video. Anybody know where Kelso went? Did he die?
Kelso,
He died.
Uh,
He died.
Kelso went to
Uh,
find Heroics.
We're having a really-
He had
EP is
determined
recruiting a
look in
nice
his eye.
enhanced shaman at this point.
You know, it's interesting. The last time we
also
did a
jumped in the maelstrom.
Oh yeah, well, 2 times ago or the last time we did this, Daniel did the same thing where he
Daniel,
left like
yeah.
10 minutes into the video. But that's why
So-
we invite like 7 people to do
Curse. Yeah.
this. Anyways, Sang, hit us with the closing statement. What do you want everybody to think about going into 7.2 and as we approach another week of rating and world content?
Oh man, yeah. I think
Say
I
that,
had
Orange, Jesus.
give a shout out to my boy Colin here. He can testify from playing HOTS with me that I haven't mastered it yet. But I really think that like we do see a lot of people struggling right now. We see a lot of people, guilds breaking up, players stepping away from the game, maybe even some frustrations with the content. I would just encourage you guys, like, one, it is a game, and if you're not enjoying it, you're doing something wrong. So find your niche in the game. If that's Mythic raiding, then like do that. Find you a group of people you like to play with in Mythic raid. If that's PvP, you know, do your PvP thing. If that's lore, dude, find all the lore in the game you can. Sean's a treasure hunter. He can tell you all about that.
Our boy Belly
is,
lore.
Yeah. I think Colin's right. We got to stop drinking the Kool-Aid here. We got to be able to step back and say, you know what? It's a game. Let's have fun. Let's find people we love playing with, and just enjoy it. You know, I think we have a lot of things to do in Legion, a lot of things to look forward to. So don't get caught up in all the things that are bad. Stay
Don't
positive.
surrender to madness.
Yeah,
Don't
don't
surrender to
surrender.
So it's a terrible.
Get out of
anyway.
here.
Stay positive. Keep checking in to see what hats Cody's wearing and what juicy videos he's making. Yeah, and if nothing else fails, come hang out with us at Exiled Power because we're awesome and we're recruiting, like always.
Oh,
We might need another healer. I'm just saying.
We might need another enhancement shop.
Because if I don't show up for a raid night, I don't know what you guys are gonna do.
Look,
Oh.
just know that you can't take a vacation anytime soon. So
Cody can. We'll just have Cody heal. It's fine.
And
Yeah, Cody, come heal Mythic Crosis and let me know how you feel.
as a final note, if I check the comments for this video and y'all are only talking to Sean, I'm gonna be pissed. So I want at least one shout out. Somebody asked me one Havoc question. So
Sean, I want to
to
know: are Mindseer relics? Are they still in the game? Oh,
He's
rip.
done.
Oh, I can
Yeah.
answer that.
we're done, Colin.
Oh my God. Well, anyways, he
We'll
screwed up
defer
the
to our
entire.
expert Colin.
He screwed up the entire video. You guys can't see it. You'll see it tomorrow. But like Marty's arm is halfway through Sean's frame at this point.
Got him.
Oh my God. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for joining me. Oh my God, what is happening? Oh, it's
Oh, no.
It's all
Getting
sorts of
worse.
screwed up. Oh, it's getting. Oh, he's
Yeah,
back.
He's back.
Oh my God.
Broke everything and now he's back.
He broke everything. Everything got screwed up. But it's okay. Guys, we're just going to wrap it up. Thank you so much for joining us today. Colin, Pub, Lalla, Sang, Marty, Kelso, screw you. I don't know where you went. You added nothing to this video, but that's fine.
He talked like once.
I know. But anyways, guys, there's a lot more coming. We'll have plenty of stuff in 7.2, some really saucy guide videos coming out, some other cool content stuff that we're going to get into. But for now, my name is Codiak, Raid Leader for Exiled Power, and we will see you next time.
With more Colin.
Deuces.
That's debatable.